So let's put our hands on tracing. Let's take a look in this video called Using Tracing, how to do page tracing and how to do application tracing. And I'll point out some nuances as we go through here. So let's just go to Visual Studio, take a look at tracing. I'm going to call up our page load example. And I want to point out one thing that you will have to do with tracing, and you'll understand why in just a second. To really trace and make sense, you need to set the properties for your page, for your web form, to flow layout. Notice page layout, I've got it set to flow layout, and I've positioned my items here. So to turn tracing on, there's a couple of things I can do. Number one, I can go into my HTML and just on the @page directive, type in here trace equals true. There's a better way to do this, and that's to go in Design, click on my web page. I'm clicking right out here in the middle to highlight my web form 1. Go to Properties, and you'll notice down here Trace, and I'm going to choose True. Now I'm going to go back to HTML and show you what that did. You'll notice that out here on my page directive, notice @page. Well, let me get back over here. Notice @page language, and I'll go all the way across here. It added right here, trace equals true. So now, notice what's going to happen when I call up this page. The page now comes up just like before, except this time, you'll notice I have a lot of extra things down here at the bottom. And let's go through these and look at them. First of all, we have request details. I see the session ID that was established for me here. Kind of interesting information. We did a GET request here. The status code was 200. It found the file. It returned it. I can see the date and time of request. Then I have general trace information. And notice this is showing when all my page events happened and what events were fired and in the order. And then there's all kinds of information on here. Control tree. This is a tree of the various controls and how they've been brought into existence. Cookies. Here's my session ID again. Headers collection. This is showing me information about my HTTP headers. And then server variables. And if you remember in ASP, you used to have to loop to get these, and you can now get them directly in tracing. But it's got all kind of information. Application, physical path. So what else is interesting down here? Remote address, remote host. Since I'm on the same machine, I get 127.0.0.1 on here. The script name. Notice the server software. I'm running Microsoft IS50. I'm using HTTP 1.1. There's a lot of information here. Now, this is pretty cool that I can get this stuff, but what if I want to run this on every page in the application? Now, I want you to notice something, too, that every time I click, this redraws. And just so hang on to that, because we can do some really cool stuff with tracing in just a few minutes. But for right now, I want to close this out, and I'm going to go back to my web form page, and I'm going to go to Properties. And in Properties, I'm going to go back to Trace, and I'm going to set Trace to false. And if I go look in my HTML up here now, on my page, trace has been set to false. But what I want to do is go set application level. So I actually need to turn this off, and I'll explain why in just a second. So I'm going to take that out. Okay, to set application level tracing, we're going to go into the web.config file. Now, I haven't pointed this out, but over here in our Solution Explorer, here's our web form. Okay, here's our code behind page. Okay, but right here. That's not our code behind page, forget that. But anyway, right here, here's our web config page. Now, if I double click this, it will bring up this XML-based configuration file. And where I see tracing information is in the system.web setting, and notice this is XML, it's easy to read. And if I scroll down, notice what I find. Trace enabled, and I'm going to set false equal to true. Now this is case sensitive, okay? So this true is not the same. A capital T is not the same as a small t. I'll get an error if I do capital T there. And so notice there's some settings out here: page output, request limit, sort by time on the trace mode and so forth. So it's going to put it in time order. So I've done that. So now if I go out, go back to my web form and request this page, I'm going to get the same look. I'm going to get tracing if I did it right. But it's at the application level. It's not on my page level. But every page in this application will report tracing now. So if I have 500 pages in this website, each one, as I go through them, will report tracing. And I can troubleshoot what's going on, what's happening, what's not happening. Now, to turn that off, obviously I'm just going to go back into web config and kick that back off. And so I will come into here, scroll down, set this back to false. Now, I do want to point out something. If I turn this on out here, if I set it to true here, and then set it to false on my individual page, then this particular page won't trace. So keep in mind, the page will override the application setting. So what a lot of people will do is turn the trace on the application level, run through their pages, and as they clear up errors on the pages, then set tracing to false on that page, and as they go through the website, then they can tell just by looking, the ones that have tracing at the bottom still have errors in them. So that's how we turn it on, that's how we use it, that's what it looks like. That's pretty cool, but that's nothing compared to being able to write your own stuff in that tracing information, and that's what we're going to do in the next video.